Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, podcasting out of last place shores of the Pacific Ocean. The Raiders are moving up in the right direction. Hopefully that continues as they kind of patrol through this 2022 season. I'm with Ryan Holmes. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and RHOLM 22 is Ryan's. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I had missed the game yesterday, but I finally was able to watch it early this morning. I got up at 6 o'clock to catch it. Shout out to Omni Design GFX for the background behind me, the Josh Jacobs Halloween logo. Yes. He does great things with the Raiders. If you guys are looking for some Raider pictures, go to @Omni Design GFX. First half of the game, quickly watching it, did not go very well. They were kind of sluggish, but thankfully they showed up in the second half so they could get another win at home, because they're going to have to start stacking wins, and the home games have to be W's. They can't take any more L's at home.
No, and I do think that maybe they can get something going after the debacle with the Cardinals. A couple of like high scoring games where the defense ended up scoring a touchdown in both of those games too, with Amik Robinson and then and Harmon with the pick six. I mean, he had to run, he had to go a long way for that pick six. He's running for days on that one, but good job by him there. But let's start off with the positives. The man behind you has just been an absolute just a terror as far as that goes, and him seeing all his buddies get reading new contracts, and they didn't want to re-up on him, and they drafted a couple of running backs and everything like that. But Josh Jacobs has been pretty amazing here, and he's gonna this year he might end up breaking all the Raiders running back records before he ends up hitting free agency.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs balled out in the second half. I mean, I read somewhere he had 10 carries in the game that went for over 7 yards, and when you look at his stat line, 20 for 143 and 3 touchdowns, you'd think there's some long runs built in there, but his long was only 15. So this guy was getting 7, 8, 10 yards a clip every time they turn around and hand him the ball. So the offensive line needs a lot of credit for opening up the holes, but Jacobs is finding them. They're running a lot of power plays, and you saw kind of the shift in this week where it wasn't so much in between the tackles. In the second half, they started throwing those crack tosses, getting him outside, because the Texans looked like they were lining up and bringing everyone to the middle to slow down the running game. So Josh McDaniels ran it outside, and you saw Jacobs get around the corner. Colton Miller led him a couple times. You saw Thayer Munford. So it was good to see the versatility in the running game. It wasn't just power. There was a lot of toss plays involved this week as well.
Yeah, and the Raiders kind of got Devontae to fit in where he could. High percentage pass plays. We had 9 targets and 8 receptions for almost 100 yards. He jokingly left the field in a manner where he was trying to maybe troll on the NFL as far as that goes. But when they got into that red zone area, they were able to strike with Matt Collins down the seam of that cover 2 defense. Good job by Ball. I mean, listen, the ball had to be a high pointed play. He's a tall receiver. Carr did a good job of putting that ball where only Matt Collins could get it.
Yeah, you could see on the replay, Jalen Petrie, for some reason, kind of bit towards Foster Moreau, who was running the corner instead of staying on the hash. And then obviously Carr saw that and then put it up high where only Hollins could get it, and Hollins went up and hauled it in. So you got to use those big receivers in the red zone and let them go up and get the ball. And Carr did a great job putting room, and Matt Collins could come down with it. 6
different Raiders caught passes. You did see a couple of plays to Hunter Renfrow as well. I thought one of the best plays by Carr in this ball game was the one where he stepped up to use Big Corey. I think Big Corey called it a Euro step. He Euro stepped his way through, and then caught Foster Moreau in the middle of the field. So good job by Carr by using his feet to make plays and extend it. I did think the offensive line, and looking at the snap count, Ryan, it looks like Thayer Munford this is progressing in a fashion where I think maybe 2-3 weeks from now, he might come off the field only when injured, only when he's hurt, because it looks like he might have that stranglehold. But you never know what's coming up with these pass rushers as we get down the road here.
Yeah, they started Illuminor. Illuminor got hurt. He hurt his ankle, so he came out, missed quite a bit of time.
What a cast too. Did you see that?
He returned I want to say in the fourth quarter, that he was back in the game briefly, and then Mumford came back in. But I would say next week. I mean, Thayer Mumford had a pretty good game just from the broadcast copy. Didn't allow a lot of pressures, was pretty good in the run game. You saw him get out on the toss plays. And the one thing about Mumford is he's a big dude with long arms. Like, he can push those edge rushers around and let Carr step up, where Illuminor isn't really that size guy that can do that. My only hesitation is Cam Jordan's coming to town, or we're going to New Orleans to play Cam Jordan. I don't know how much I want to leave Thayer Mumford one-on-one with a veteran like Cam Jordan, but they're going to have to do it sooner or later. He's been out playing Jermaine Illuminor the last 2 weeks, so we'll see what happens. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if Thayer Mumford started moving forward.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense in every way, because like it's a good way. And listen, he's a 7th round pick, so if they can develop him into a starting right tackle, that's a big coup for the scouting department and Ziegler there, right?
Definitely, they clearly hit on Parham. Parham's going to be a 10-year starter in this league inside. So good job with the 3rd round pick, getting a guy who can start on the interior and fill a need. I'm not sold 100% on Mumford. He's young. He has potential. He has upside. To me, he's going to fit more in the average bucket. Like, this guy's a chance to be an average right tackle. He's definitely not athletic enough to be a Pro Bowl level guy. There's a chance he could develop into a solid right tackle, but I wouldn't bypass other options just because he's on the roster. But he's good enough right now to where there is some upside to develop, and hopefully you get an average right tackle out of him, which in the 7th round is a great pick.
Yeah. The point where the Raiders kind of took this game over, 2017, then they come down, get a touchdown, and kind of take control from there. And then you can, like, when you're kind of a running, and this is what the Raiders are, a running team. Is there a concern? And I know this is Victory Monday and it's positive talk, but are we concerned about if the Raiders can't run the football to the clip they ran against the Broncos, against the Texans, against the Chiefs? Can they still be competitive in these games if they can't run the football at that level?
Well, they're running it at a very high level. They can be competitive if it's 4.5 yards a carry. I mean, right now they're running at 6-7 yards a clip. That's not sustainable. They're not going to keep doing that. As much as we want them to do it every week, Josh Jacobs isn't going for $140 every week. There's going to be weeks where it's going to be 22 for 90, and the Raiders are just going to have to make do. But as long as they keep turning around and handing the ball off, good things can happen, because you're not having this offensive line pass protect 35 to 40 times a game, where the defensive ends can tee off. Play action is still available. So the Raiders have to run the football, because then it opens up Devontae Adams down the field on play action. It gets the teams out of those 2 high shells and makes them bring the extra defender in the box. And that's when you take your shots. My favorite play of the whole game, I want to say it was the second to last drive, where they went play action. You saw Matt Collins pretend like he's going to come down and crack, and they slipped Hunter Renfrow across the field in that kind of deep over against cover 3. And then you saw the corner. Once he saw Matt Collins look like he was going to do the crack block, he came down, and then they just ran Renfrow across the field right into that open spot. So, like, McDaniels in the second half called a pretty good game.
Yeah, and that's good to see, because we obviously want to see him kind of make those adjustments at halftime and get things going. The game was tied 10-10 at the half, and then the Raiders kind of pulled away in the 3rd quarter. Harmon, who is, especially in these home games, I mean, he almost he did everything he could for the Raiders against the Cardinals. I mean, the 3rd down stop, and then the great play on Hollywood Brown. The Raiders probably should have won that game on a field goal. Gets the pick six. He's really been the most consistent player in that secondary. It's kind of disappointing. I think there's some pieces there that like Everett is kind of underwhelmed. I think we all had high hopes for Trayvon Morag, and he is not kind of, especially on that tight end out, the tight end play where he ran the out. That was just like gotta squeeze that off. Weird thoughts about Harmon's play, and then kind of what can we do about the rest of the secondary. I think Rocky Sin is playing well this year as well, but it's kind of frustrating to see what's kind of happening with the safety play, because Harmon's the only guy who's really playing at a high level.
Yeah, Harmon was a free agent addition. They brought in to add depth, and he's out playing the other two safeties. And if you notice, Merrick didn't start this game. It was Harmon and Abram. Merrick came in on the first couple series when they went to extra defensive back. So obviously the coaching staff has some concerns with Merrick. He should lock up Jordan Akins. Like, he was pretty good against Kelsey, 20-20 last week, got lost in the red zone. And to me, it's more just understanding his leverages, splits, what the receivers might do. They're asking him to play a lot more man coverage, and it's just not working right now. Like, there's no way that if you're the end defender and the guy's running an out and you're playing man coverage with no one to the sideline, that you just let him run an out and you stay on the inside, and then you take a poor angle and you give up a 30-yard play. So it's those small attention to detail. You stay on the outside, you force the throw inside where you have help, and that's a 4-yard gain instead of a 30-yard gain. So he's better when he's just playing deep center field. It seems at this point, but right now you have Harmon doing that, who has instincts. He had the interception in the Tennessee game as well. Abram, like, I texted you this morning after I watched the game, like, thumbs down. Abram, Averett, and Merrick all did not play well in this game. And that's a concern when 3 of the 5 guys you're counting on in your secondary aren't covering. And this is the Houston Texans with no weapons. It's not like they're playing a high-powered offense. And Chris Olave should be licking his chops when he watches this tape next week as they play the Saints. And if Michael Thomas comes back, I don't know what's going to happen. Thankfully, they don't have a high-powered quarterback. Drew Brees isn't over there anymore. But I have a lot of concerns about this secondary for the next 3 weeks with Nate Hobbs missing time. Amik Robertson, I'm assuming he played well. It's hard to tell because they didn't really target him. So I'm assuming he was on his guy, or the other guys were just so bad they just picked on them. But the biggest disappointment coming out of the game to me was Merrick and Everett.
And one of the plays I didn't like was, I think it was 3rd and 7, led to a pass from Mills to Dorsett where Abram blitzes the running back, locks him up with a block, and he jumped inside. Like, you can't give. I mean, Davis Mills is pedestrian at best. You gotta hold that edge so the cavalry can come. Like, you gotta keep him in the pocket. You can't let him roll outside and then end up making a play there. So that kind of led to 300 yards, 28 for 41 game for Davis Mills, which should not be happening against anybody.
Yeah, they got him in 3rd and long a few times. My biggest issue with the defense was, and the defense, I know they only gave up 20 points. The defense had one of their worst games of the season. They forced 1 punt against a bad offense. Patrick Graham brought pressure like I thought he would, but he's bringing guys out of the secondary from 8 to 10 yards deep that have no chance whatsoever of getting home. And then you have Merrick or the safeties that are supposed to be rotating down and cover those slot receivers are playing 15 to 20 yards deep on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. Or you're trying to get Run Diablo from mugging the A-gap back underneath those routes. These guys aren't good enough to do that. And to ask them to do that against this quarterback, get up on the line and bring pressure, make him throw hot. Like, why are we blitzing from so far away? Like, you're basically eliminating those guys and then you're leaving guys wide open underneath. And it happened over and over and over again.
Yeah. And as far as Abrams goes with Diablo, we could talk about like them blitzing, but like there's a talent to blitzing. And some guys just never get home. Some safeties never get home, and some linebackers never get home, and those guys never get home. I mean, they never get there. Even when they come clean, they never get there. And to your point, like, you got to bring some of those pieces of the puzzle close to the line of scrimmage, so it's not so you coming from half field, coming from midfield to get a blitz. I know Paul Gunther was good for that. Like, I'm going to blitz, but it's going to come from all the way from 20 yards on the field. It doesn't work. They could have been more effective in the blitzing. I thought, there was a portion of the game where Cleveland Farrell, Chandler Jones, Max Crosby started getting to the quarterback. So that's what they're kind of built to do. They're kind of built. I mean, they can get a lead in games and then let those guys eat afterwards. And I mean, that's the way it is. But like, it's a long time before you get a chance for that moment where you get to kind of get your defensive line eating on the other team's quarterback, because you're sitting there waiting so long to get that pass rush going. And sometimes then it doesn't come early. It came kind of late for the Raiders in this game, and that's kind of an issue as far as that goes. And I think you have to get some kind of pressure from somewhere else, because people are not going to let 98 wreck the game all the time. It's just that simple. They're not going to let people. They're not going to let him do that.
Yeah, I thought Bilal Nichols had his best game as a pass rusher so far this season. That was the concern that we talked about early was the pass rush. This was the game where we needed to see Chandler Jones come alive, and he got a half a sack, but that was more Farrell and Crosby from the other side forcing Mills to step to his left, and then he worked back underneath Tunzel. He didn't beat him clean. So again, Chandler Jones, to me, like, his pass rush this game just wasn't up to par. When you need those guys to rush in the first half, they just gave him way too much time. And until they basically took Pierce out of the game, where they went up 11, where they had to throw the ball, they weren't really getting home.
Yeah.
So big concern, especially against that offensive line. And the fact that you allowed the Texans, I want to say they went over 400 yards, because Davis Mills had 300, the running back
had
92.
Yeah, they had 404.
Yeah, so that, you can't give up 400 yards to that kind of offense. So I know they held them to 20 points, but there was some luck involved with that. There was a pick six, there was a missed field goal, there was a turnover on downs late, but the Texans punted one time, and that falls directly on Patrick Graham.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference between, like, somebody posted some stats between this year and last year's defense. They definitely had more of a interior pass rush last year. I mean, before Phylon got hurt, he got some pressures. Also, Jefferson, who's now with the Seahawks, got some pressure as well. So up the middle. So that was something that they sorely missed. You mentioned Bilal Nichols. Hopefully that is something that the Raiders can continue to get some better play in this ball game, because and also in the run defense part of it, the Raiders went into the game as a really good run defense. They faced Pierce. Pierce made some plays, and 41 is pretty dynamic. Like that's what kind of scares me about it, because if they want to if they have an all-time game from Kamara, that could be a tough situation for the Raiders. I mean, Kamara is a very slippery, elusive back, kind of the back that the Raiders usually always, have trouble with as far as stopping in big moments.
Yeah, I'm not worried about them handing the ball to Kamara. I'm worried about him catching the ball in the backfield and who's going to guard him one-on-one. If the Raiders want to play a ton of man, which they've played a lot more man the last 2-3 weeks, they don't have a guy that can match up with them. It's not going to be Abram. It's not going to be Diablo. So I don't know how they match up with Kamara in the passing game. So maybe they do play a little bit more zone. It'll depend on which wide receivers I think are available for the Saints on how they want to match up with them that way. The Raiders are kind of in an interesting situation where they have some guys that are better playing man than zone, and then other guys within the secondary or the linebacker who are better at zone than man. So it's whichever one you call, like, there's going to be a disadvantage for the defense somewhere on the field. So until they get the personnel right and they get the guys that can play the schemes they want, which I don't think they have on this roster, the secondary, what we thought was going to be a strength, at this point, those guys aren't living up to their draft status. I saw a lot on Twitter the last couple of days, like, the defense stinks, and I agree they're not playing well. They need to draft more defense. They need to put more on the defense side. They've tried. Abram was a first-round pick. Farrell was a first-round pick. Merrick was a second-round pick. Isaiah Johnson was a fourth-round pick. Robertson was a fourth-round pick. Like, they've tried to add guys. Diablo was a third-round pick. So they've used picks on these defensive linemen or the defense, and those guys, none of those guys have really come to fruition. They do need help at certain spots, but at this point in the season, they're not going to get it. If it's not on the practice squad or on the roster right now, I don't think this team is in a position to where they can make a trade and give away, first, second, third round pick for a player. So they're going to have to compete with what they have on the roster. And you've kind of seen Patrick Graham. They tried Neil Farrell Jr. on some passing downs inside. That didn't really give them much this week. They've tried Cleveland Farrell in there, and he actually probably had his best game of this season. This past week, played 41 snaps. He took snaps away from Chandler Jones too, where he played a lot outside opposite Crosby. So they're giving Chandler Jones a little bit of a break, which he needs at his age. Malcolm Kuntz got some snaps again. I know everyone's clamoring for Malcolm Kuntz, but I saw him on the field a few times. I didn't see him do anything in his 10 or 12 snaps, how many ever he had. So I don't know what they're going to do on the defense side of the ball, but if they can stop people and if they can get key turnovers, and it always helps when the defense scores a touchdown, this offense is clicking right now. I think they're up to number 3 in the league in EPA, behind Buffalo and Kansas City. So Josh McDaniels, once the run game got going, this offense is clicking.
No question about it. I'm looking at the snap count. It looks like Cleveland Farrell had 63% of the snaps, and then Chandler Jones had 66% of the snaps. So, they're going to use him to try to make him a useful player there. Kuntz had 11% of the snaps. So, that's how that goes. You saw DJ Turner get some run here a little bit. Had one nice little end around play. Got caught from behind on other 2. Just when I thought started to get comfortable with him in return game, he fumbled one.
That's the punt.
So he was. We just can't win on special teams. It seems like, but so maybe on one of those kickoffs he could have probably downed it. But he's there to try to make something happen on a return. So I'll give him credit for trying to make a play there. I kind of understand what he's trying to do there as far as that goes. But I mean, offensively, they have found an identity. They know what they have as far as having a big time player with Adams. He obviously will help Renfro. They can also sneak in some plays with Hollins, and this is all without Waller, who I think one of the Raiders beat reporters showed Waller kind of catching passes before the game, even though he was going to be out, trying to see where he's trying to gauge where that hamstring is as well too. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. There was a Abdullah sighting a couple times here as well. So we'll see what happens in the future with Amir Abdullah. I do think the one thing I am worried about though is, and then they're not worried about it because they're just going to run Jacobs into the ground as far as this goes. I do wonder if Jacobs has to miss a game or two, because they have not kind of solidified themselves with a number 2 back. Zaire White got 1 carry in this game. Did Brandon Bolden even play in this game?
I saw Bolden and Abdullah made a lot of tackles on special teams.
Special teams, yeah. So they don't really have a kind of a back. I think they want White to be the backup running back, but I'm kind of worried about that part of it. But listen, Jacobs is going to do whatever he can to stay on the field this year because he wants to kind of solidify his financial status, and plus he's just a tough running back. He wants to ball out this year. I think he feels good about how this team runs the football, and he just wants to continue to keep doing what he's doing. I mean, the guy has just been. 7 yards of carry is just stupid. I mean, that's just so you're getting 7 yards of pop every time. I mean, surprised you didn't run it even more with him.
Yeah, my concern is they're not even using White. Like it's like, oh, Jacobs needs they're only using him when Jacobs comes off because he carried the ball 4 times in a row. They don't have anything designed week to week to get him the ball 3 or 4 times. So I think they need to start doing that. They need to back off a little bit on Josh Jacobs' workload here. He can't touch the ball 25 times a week between running and catching. He's going to get dinged up. This version of Jacobs, I remember tweeting last year from the Rams scrimmage that Jacobs and Crosby looked phenomenal and they were ready to be breakout stars. This is what Jacobs looked like in that scrimmage. Like he was just running around, making people miss, athletic, agile. He had moves, and then obviously he got dinged up pretty early last year. So my question to you would be, if you're Dave Ziegler, what do you do with Jacobs in the offseason? Because at this point, I don't think they can let him go. Like they're going to have to figure out some way, but can they invest even more money in this offense when everyone's clamoring for defense? So the Raider fans want them to spend all the money on defense, but they also want to turn around and hand the bag to Jacobs. So can you pay Waller, Jacobs, Adams, Carr, Renfro, and go get an offensive lineman, and they're still going to be complaining about the defense. So if you're Dave Ziegler, what are you doing?
And the O line, we're going to
Yeah.
be complaining about that too as well. I mean, it depends. To me, it's like, what does the passing game evolve where like Jacobs has, a 20 carry game for 50 yards, but they still win by 2 scores because they're able to pass the ball down the field and make plays against good teams. Like, because some good teams are going to be able to kind of slow down Jacobs just a little bit. So like it depends on how this offense kind of evolves. Like, if it kind of stays where it's just this great balance. I mean, every time they put up the Raiders balance sheet where it was like run pass ratio, it was always like 17 and 17, 21-20, 21-20. That was like how it was almost the entire game. It's great to have that balance, but these coordinators are pretty good. They're going to take away that balance at some point. So can they continue to play this style of football and win games? I mean, that to me, that's that'd be the biggest thing. But they do have to find a way to get White. If you committed to White, and they basically committed to White in this situation, he has to be a way where he can get 4 or 5 carries in a game. And whatever he did well in college, like you got to get him comfortable, get him acclimated to the NFL. And my question is like, how good is his pass protection too? Like, I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons rookie running backs don't play is because they can't protect the quarterback.
Yeah, you saw. I think Abdullah played most on third down. He got in this game. If I'm Dave Ziegler, I think I'm going to franchise tag Josh Jacobs. The number's 9.5 right now, which is essentially what the 5th-year option would have been anyways. Mm-hmm. I'm not letting him walk for nothing, and letting him test the free agent market.
And do they have an opportunity where they can like negotiate during that time period where he's he's a franchise? So yeah, so you can, because I'm sure he doesn't want to get franchised. Nobody does.
I think it's July 15th. They have to sign a long-term deal by.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and franchise him, try to get like a 2-year, 3-year deal extension. He's playing great, and I think the biggest evolution in his game is he looks so much more comfortable catching the football out of the backfield. I feel I used to get so like worried about him catching the football out of the backfield, but now it's a hands catch, it's a tuck, and then I can tell you, man, if you put him on one of these game shows or whatever and put him in a telephone booth, he'd find a way out of it. Like he has some of these telephone booth runs that are just incredible. Him in short spaces, it's just been phenomenal for the Raiders.
Yeah, I think I could, like I said, I could bite the bullet 1 year, $9.5 million if that's what he wants to do. Clearly, he's going to want to get paid and get a bigger bonus than that, but he doesn't have any leverage. Like no one's going to trade for him and give up a first-round pick at that point.
No.
So I think with the physicality he plays, I want to see him do it this year, and he's doing a great job of it. I want to see if he can stay healthy this year, and then let's try if he can do it another year.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I think you move on from him. Like I don't think they can just run him into the ground for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and give him that extension. Because of how physical he is, I don't think his body's going to be able to hold up 5 years from now. He's not going to be the same running back he is now with just his style of play. So I don't think you can let him go, but I do think the Raiders should try to franchise tag him. If they transition tag him, the cost will be less, but there's no compensation. So I wouldn't even go down that road.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to figure out how to add defensive pieces in the offseason. And clearly they could focus on that with the draft. But Josh Jacobs right now, to me, the 3 best players on the Raiders are Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. Those are their three guys right now. They have to count on those guys.
They have to.
When you look around the league, I know a lot of people are saying, well, if the Raiders lose this week, they're going to be 2-5, like trade Jacobs. But like, I'm not trading him. You want to give me 5 draft picks, we can have that conversation. But if you took Jacobs off this team right now, like, how are they going to find a way to run the ball and win games?
They can't function.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think it's well, I will admit the defense played bad in this game. They're giving up 25 points a game. They can't sustain it that way, but at least the defense is scoring touchdowns. And I know we like to throw out how many points the defense is giving up, but I like to take out the ones where the offense fumbles the ball and they return it. So I think they're at 23.8, which still is too high because I'm not counting the touchdown on the Renfro fumble against the defense. I know everyone wants to run to the list and go to the bottom and go, look, the Raiders are giving up 25 points a game, but I don't count that. So to me, they're somewhere around 21st or 22nd in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, or the pick before the half that Derek throws,
Yeah,
and then and gives the ball to
yeah,
yeah. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's not every score isn't is its own story. You got to look at all. You got to look at all
yeah.
the you got to look at all the whole things that go around it. As far as that goes.
But they're going to need weeks where they come out and give up 16, 17 points a game. They can't keep giving up 23. This is the first time they give up less than 23. So at some point they're going to have to put the clamps on someone, and hopefully it's the next 2 weeks because they're facing offenses that aren't quite as dynamic. Because it's definitely not going to happen when they get into the division, other than Denver. They're not going to slow down the Chargers. They're not going to slow down the Chiefs. Like they're not going to slow down the Bills. Like these kind of teams. So luckily they don't play the Bills this year, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. It was good to see a couple AFC West teams lose. And the Raiders are a player or two away from being 4-2 and basically in first place. If they could have beat the Chiefs, they could have beat the Chiefs and the Cardinals and held on to those 2 games. We're talking differently about this team. So
I mean, the defense has not been great. Um, I don't know if he has. I'll put it to you this way: the offense is what ranked third in EPA. You said,
EPA, yeah,
yeah, the third in EPA, and they have Josh Jacobs, they have Kendall Renfro, they have Derek Carr, they have Josh Jacobs, right? Like
Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams. Like like I mean, this is like I mean, that's pretty okay. That's all right. That you should be. You kind of should be like the defensive side of the ball. I mean, it's Max Crosby, and then without Hobbs, it's it's
Without
kind
Hobbs.
of without Hobbs, it makes it pretty. It makes it pretty bleak over there. So like I know that like we talked about Dayball making chicken soup out of chicken, you know what? But I mean that you're as you are. I mean we are sitting there, and I'm not making. I know people are gonna say, Dwayne, you talked about Patrick Graham all the time, and now he's with the Raiders, and you're making excuses. I'm not making excuses, but I do think that they have to try to. I mean, I think Morik is the guy who they gotta start developing. I mean, it has to click for him badly. I mean, that's the. I don't expect. I know what Abram is. I I don't expect anything dynamic from Abram. I mean, even in space against Burkhead, he got burned on that little play, on a little swing out on the pass in the flat. So I don't expect a lot of things. I did have some big expectations for Moreg, and he's not delivering. And then on Sunday Night Football, I watch Holland go nuts and get a pick, and I didn't even know that he was voted team captain of the on the Dolphins as well too. So he has to get that has to click over. And I know it's been a couple defensive changes, but it got to happen as far as the Raiders go, because they're stuck in a spot where they kind of have to. He is in a spot where people can criticize the defense all they want, but he's in a spot where he has to kind of mix and match off zone and man coverage and what he really wants to do, because they don't have the horses. I mean, I'm worried. I mean, you mentioned Kamara in space against Blake Martinez or Diablo or or Perryman. That's like a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the All-22 of Merrick specifically from this last week, because the touchdown on the 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 7, it was 3rd and long, the one in the red zone that went to Philip Dorsett.
Yeah, that had to be
There was,
off.
from just my recollection, it literally looked like there was no one threatening the middle of the field. It's too high coverage. Like, it's the only receiver in his general area, and the guy's wide open. Like, it's a late break. He's just not diagnosing it. This is a guy that played a lot of too high safety. They played a lot of quarters at TCU. Like, he should be thriving in these kind of defenses. Yeah. I don't know what Robertson was doing on that play. It was kind of, they had two receivers on that side, and he kind of ran up at the snap, and then Everett was kind of standing there not knowing what to do, and then they left him wide open. So it's going to be, if Merrick doesn't take that next step soon, the Raiders defense is going to continue to give up a lot of points and a lot of yards.
Yeah, a lot.
Because now we're talking about liabilities. Diablo's a liability in pass coverage. Unless it's man. He's been okay in man. But if they play zone, him and Perryman are both liabilities. Merrick's been a liability in both man and zone. Everett did not look good this week. And now I'll give him a benefit of the doubt. He missed a month. But and you know what Robertson can do? Like, his size is going to be a detriment, but he's going to make enough plays to stay out on the field. But where are they going to get turnovers from?
Yeah.
If the main guys that they've spent draft picks, and we know Abram's not good. I'm like, Abram doesn't get sacks and he doesn't get turnovers. He kind of just flies around the field and he hits a guy whenever he's in his general area, but he hasn't taken that next step. He's in his 4th year. And by now you'd expect him to be able to do that. And he's, like you mentioned earlier, blitzing and running inside when he's the outside contained guy and just letting the quarterback roll out. And Burke had put a couple moves on him in this game where he basically just ran right by him.
Jesus, what are we doing?
So they're going to have to figure something out. Maybe they tighten up some of these coverages and call less defense, a less different scheme as far as not trying to mix a bunch of different coverages, because they've played a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4. They've played a lot of 5. They have these fire zones. Like they seem like they have a pretty expansive defensive call sheet. So maybe they need to trim that down. But these guys need to understand where to be and who to cover. There's just too much confusion on the back end that's been going on, especially this week against a team. They should have put the clamps on this team.
Yeah, they should have. They should have. I'm definitely will. Ray Nation will take the victory, but yeah, this should not have been. It shouldn't have been 20. I'll say it shouldn't have been 20-17 late third quarter. Like, I mean, yeah, you can't do that against the Texans. You can't. It should have been.
And then they give up a touchdown. They go right down the field. What did they make it? 17-13.
Yeah.
And Texans are like, okay, we're just going to go score another touchdown in 5 plays, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you can't.
Thankfully, the guy behind me, like John Gruden's into nightmares, so he was the nightmare for.
He was. And you gotta be careful, because like once you don't want to be in a close game with one of these great players or pseudo great players, like Pierce is definitely on his way to being a really good player. And then this week they have Kamara coming up, and like they had, I think the last time the Saints played was Thursday night, so they had maybe some extra time to get ready for the Raiders. Dennis Allen, that whole thing is going to be made up, and you're going to see him and Derek Carr shake hands at the beginning of the game. But I do think that there could be a chance for some big plays by the Raiders in this game, because they are, he brings pressure, and if you catch him in that pressure, you can definitely, he's been getting caught in pressure this year, and big plays. Like Geno Smith making big plays against him. Geno Smith looks like a whole new man. I can't even believe after watching. As soon as the Raider game was over, I went over to Seahawks Chargers, and I couldn't. He's like a whole brand new guy. I gotta give that guy a lot of credit as far as that goes. Anything else on the
I will mention
on the reaction show before we hit the later in the week when we go to all 22?
Josh McDowell was not afraid to call double passes and trick plays.
Cousin, like, why is he doing that?
And Jacobs got real lucky on the one where he flipped it back when he was going to his left. Like, he didn't really get it out there. Like, the defensive end was fairly close to being able to knock that on the ground, and that's a fumble.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Carr got it, escaped around, and threw it underneath. I think they got 2 yards to Moreau, but like, these teams aren't falling for it now. Like, they covered up that one pretty good, and then they did lose track of Hollins on the other one underneath, but they called it twice in like 2 drives.
Yeah, and they weren't playing, like, I feel like those plays would have been like, against man coverage, then yeah, but you know what I mean, like, but they're playing zone. It's like, right, I mean all that, it was basically all that for like a 1 yard play to Foster Moreau, and then all that for it ended up being a first down to Hollins, but
it's like
it was
12 yards. But yeah, you want chunk plays down the field. When you call that, you're looking for explosive touchdowns or 30, 40-yard plays, but.
Who was it? Edelman against the Ravens in that playoff game? I forgot who it was.
Just turn around and give it to 28. Like, we don't need to call trick plays.
No, save those for those for down by 17 against the Chiefs at home.
And shout out to Daniel Carlson, who I didn't realize till I watched the game this morning, is 18 of 21 in his career on 50-plus yard field goals, and he's now made 40 consecutive. I think it is. He's pretty good.
I mean, these kickers are pretty. I mean, these kickers in general have been pretty good, and he's been phenomenal. He's been really good. You almost wish he wasn't as good, because once in a while I wish they would go for it.
We probably just jinxed them.
I know, probably. What you mean? But then again, he's in a dome now. He's going to go to another dome in the Saints. So we'll see what happens there. So Put On Raiders podcast. Dwayne Douglas, Ryan Holmes. Wrapping it up here on the.
One last rule I want to bring up. We're not allowed to talk playoffs until they get to 500. Like, these fans online that are going crazy, like, the word playoffs is not allowed to be mentioned until your record is equal. You have to be 500 before you can start using that word.
And I don't want to see, like, okay, so another rule I want to add to this. I feel like I'm on the, but another rule is like, listen, I understand he is a very polarizing figure. I understand number 4 is like, oh my God, like, we we spend a lot of time on Derek, and like for me with Derek is like on Sundays I'm rooting for him, and like we on this show he plays bad, we talk about it. He plays good, we talk about it. I thought he was solid in that game. I mean, I'm not sure. I didn't see the shot to the ribs, but he still was able to get an accurate ball off on that, and then come back in the game and play well. But I don't want to see like like when you're a fan of. It seems like the people are fans of Derek more than the Raiders. I don't want to see every positive Derek Carr stat because when the Raiders win. I didn't have time today. I didn't want to respond. I didn't want to go in deep, but I can pull up, a bunch of different stats too as well. And I think, one thing I did, and the guy actually got mad at me when I just said Raiders win. That's all. I mean, because I don't care about anything else but the Raiders winning the game. So the Raiders won the game. I don't need a list of every quarterback from Rich Gannon to Derek Carr. I know that. I know the list very well. It doesn't matter.
I watched it.
I watched you watching it in person.
Yeah.
So I was screaming at TV in Connecticut back in the day. Doing that. So we know. So calm down. The record is 2-4. They have an opportunity to continue this run, and let's get to 500 and see where it takes them. And then I don't want to lose this game and then have to wait to try to get to 5-5. They have 2 games on the road. They're going to be out in this dirty South. For a couple of weeks probably. They made that request to the NFL that if we're going to play in the South, can we just have both games back to back? They have them back to back. Go out there and go win that game. And listen, changes are happening around the AFC because look what happens. Look what the Colts are doing. They're sitting Matt Ryan. They're playing LRB, whatever is that. What was the quarterback?
Ellinger.
Ellinger's the quarterback. So things can open up for the Raiders quickly, but they have to take advantage of themselves. You can't keep wishing these teams to lose.
I thought Derek was very efficient, and he threw some good balls this week.
Yeah.
He moved around in the pocket, especially on that ball to Moreau. This is the kind of Derek Carr that we need week in and week out. He avoided some pressures. He got the ball to where it needed to go. He took some shots down the field on play action. Mm-hmm. So, and to me, and I've been texting you a lot about him recently, I'm in the boat where he's like a solid game manager. I don't think he's elite. I don't think he's ever going to be top 5, top 8 in this league, but you can win with him if you have this kind of running game. You have a Devontae Adams, and the defense can hold their fort. Now, my concern is, can you win deep into the playoffs and win a Super Bowl with him? That's my question. But you can definitely win games with him if everything else around him is going right. And right now, the last 2 of the last 3 weeks, and you could argue last week it was too. He's put together 3 pretty good games after some disappointing start to the season, but Derek needs to do it for 17 weeks. It can't be 3 or 4 week stretches. So right now we're at 3. He needs to go out and have a good game against the Saints. He needs to have a good game against the Jaguars, and then just keep building. So
exactly.
Well, let's not get crazy. I think you tweeted me. Someone said he was like the number 3 quarterback in the league or something.
Oh, they said. Somebody said the QBR is the ultimate stat line for quarterbacks. Forget wins and
Disagree.
Losses. Forget.
Well, QBR is baked into QBR is the score of the game, and if you're winning and you're on a good team, your QBR is going to be high as long as you don't do stupid stuff and turn the ball over in the fourth quarter.
Exactly. So, with that being said, wins and losses, coaches and QBs, they get labeled with it. So sorry. When I go to the standings in the NFL.com, I look for the Raiders, LV Raiders. I don't look for any quarterback there as far as that goes. He is a good quarterback. He's solid. Just keep building, man, and keep making plays. When he had to make a play down the field to Hollins, he did. Checks at the line, all that stuff. A little bit shaky as far as he got his own fumble back. Guys take a shot to the ribs. Still made a good throw. I'll never criticize somebody's pain because I don't know how hard they got hit as far as that goes. But if he's a grown man, he got hit in the ribs. I'm sure that didn't feel good. I'm sure he definitely felt enough pain to be on the ground for a little bit. So he's a good quarterback.
I think the wind may have been knocked out of him too.
Yeah. It happens. It happens. Good player. Just want to see him continue to build. And when he does not play well, it's okay to talk about it and say why he didn't play well. It's okay. It's not the end of the world.
We talked about how bad the defense played. We talk about players.
And I love Patrick Graham.
They play bad. I do too. I like Patrick Graham, and I've been
Yeah.
on here for a couple of weeks, like
Yeah.
talking bad about Patrick Graham.
Yeah, we
It is
have. I
what it
mean,
is.
it is what it is. What it is. He needs to do a little bit more, and I think blitzing is a big part of it because you don't. It'll help Max Crosby, and it also will help the secondary who doesn't have to cover for as long. I mean, you don't want these guys out there covering for a long period of time, even if it is Andy Dalton and Trevor Lawrence coming up next week. So.
Did Sam Webb get any run in this game? Because I don't remember seeing
Whoa,
him on
you
the
know what?
telecast.
That's a great question. Let me see what happened. I did not see Sam Webb in this.
Because I would figure they would have thrown him out there when Averett was struggling, but I'm
Let's
almost
see.
positive I didn't see him on the field. I wasn't looking for him, but I didn't notice him.
He's 26. I'm not seeing anything with Webb. So I'm like, it's weird that. I mean, maybe they wanted to give our Averett opportunity. I almost call him Arnett because of the hair, but yeah,
He's playing like him right now.
he's playing like him. He's playing like him. He's playing like him. He didn't get in Kelsey's face as far as that goes. That's it. That's it, folks. We'll talk about some more stuff in the middle of the week, but thank you for joining us here on the Put On Raiders podcast. Take care, Raider Nation. We won.
Peace
We
out.
won again. They won a game. Victory Monday.